Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Books and Brunch with BYTA. This is our summer 2026 event, so we're really happy that you chose to be with us for an hour this Sunday. I'm Jana Long, Executive Director of Black Yoga Teachers Alliance, and we are so happy to have our special guest today. Thank you for registering. If you're a BITA member, really happy that you're here. We're happy you're all here, but to the BITA members, we always like to say we love you, we thank you, and we appreciate you. And just really quickly, what Books and Brunch with BITA is, these are quarterly online events, or whenever we can get one together. They are produced and hosted by BITA members. We're delighted to bring authors of books on yoga and meditation, contemplative and spiritual practice, lifestyle, and wellness onto this platform to engage with our community. If you're a member of BITA and you'd like to produce and host a Books and Brunch with BITA segment, drop us a line at blackyogateachers@gmail.com. Before we get started, and I turn this over to our wonderful host, Pamela Stokes Eggleston, I always take a moment to give a shout out to our administrative team working behind the scenes to help bring this event to you. Our technical director and associate producer, Galanda Brooker, who's joining us from Ghana, of all places, and BITA's creative services director, Lorenzo Wilkins, behind the scenes, just keeping everything running smoothly. So always want to give them a shout out. This event is being recorded, I think, and it will be uploaded to the BITA website for viewing and to our YouTube channel. I should say that. The YouTube channel link is on our website, so let me correct that. So without further ado, before I mess up anymore, let me turn this over to Pamela Stokes Eggleston. Pamela is a distinguished yoga therapist, a somatic movement specialist, and a published author whose career bridges integrative health, military, family, and veteran support and social impact. As founder of Yoga to Sleep and advisor and faculty at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health's School of Integrative Therapy, where she previously served as director, Pamela has built a nationally recognized practice specializing in trauma-informed yoga, rest, and veteran caregiver wellness, a contributing author to landmark texts, including Best Practices for Yoga with Veterans and Yoga and Resilience, Empowering Practices for Services of Survivors of Sexual Trauma. Let me say that again. She's a contributing author to Yoga and Resilience, Empowering Practices for Survivors of Sexual Trauma. She also has consulted for the VA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and on Congress-supported publications. A co-founder of Blue Star Families, Pamela's work has been featured in Yoga Journal, Essence, and on MSNBC. She is the author of You Are the Pendulum, Poems and Practices for an Unsettling World. And by the way, there's a link to Pamela's Books and Brunch with BITA when we hosted her to talk about her book. So again, the title of that book is You Are the Pendulum, Poems and Practices for an Unsettling World, and co-host of You Good podcast. Pamela, let me turn it over to you because my tongue is too thick today. So take it over from me, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jana. It's lovely to be here. I love BYTA and I love our community. So I was really excited to bring this to Jana and to BYTA to talk about my very, very good friend's book, Sit With Me, Miss Oneika Mays. So I'm going to read a little bit about Oneika and then we're going to dive right into it. Oneika teaches mindfulness where it's needed, when it's needed. I know that's right. Author of Sit With Me. She has spent over a decade bringing loving kindness practice to Rikers Island, as well as leading retreats and workshops at Kripalu, New York Insight, Lincoln Center, and beyond. Welcome, 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 Monica.
I am so happy to be here with you. And every time I just hear your bio, I light up, I light up. And your book is actually in my bag right now because I was taking it with me. Those poems are just,
Oh,
they're a
thank you.
balm to my soul.
Thank you. This is going to be like a love fest. This is
It
going
really
to
is going to be a love fest. This is my favorite interview, and I haven't even done it yet.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So we're going to get right to it. Like, why did you even write this book? Why did you say, sit with me, a no BS journey to meditation and mindfulness?
There's so many reasons. I think a big part of it was because mindfulness and meditation and yoga really saved my life. Um, Whether it was through trauma I was processing or just being a Black queer woman living in the United States of America, when I discovered yoga, when I stood on the top of a mat with a Rodney Yee VHS tape plugged in, I'm dating myself with that, and took a breath, I found myself. And then I wanted to take my practice to other places. I felt like I wanted to share it. So I started volunteering. And when I was volunteering at Rikers Island, I would write about the classes that we taught because they were so powerful. And I wanted people to understand what life was like inside. And I got so much feedback about, oh, you need to put these into a book. This needs to be a book. And then a really dear friend of mine said, you need to talk about your journey because you went from spending over 20 years in retail leadership and running bookstores to now being a yoga meditation teacher. So it made sense to put the two together and sit with me, a no BS journey to mindfulness and meditation. I think is part love letter to myself and to other people who feel lost and alone, where I talk about the practice of loving kindness and how it changed my life. And then it's also about Rikers and about the impact that Rikers had on me as a person and how I learned to show up in the world differently. And I think it's a field guide for people to understand what loving kindness is and how it can help you change your life.
Wow. Thank you for that. You say in the book on page 8, I don't have the pages memorized, but I just, on page 8, you say you learned a lot about love at Rikers. And we, as friends, we've talked about this previously, but you say you learned a lot about love
Mm-hmm.
at Rikers. And in fact, you gave out the Bell Hooks book, All About Love, to some of the inmates there. You are part of the wellness program there. You volunteered at Rikers for about 6 years and then worked there full time for about 4 years, correct? I
That's correct.
wonder, I wonder what new things did you learn or experience once you became full time at Rikers that surprised you?
Oh, thank you for asking me this question. There is such a distinction between volunteering somewhere like Rikers Island, right? When a place like Rikers, one of the most notorious jails in the country, is it's like walking into the belly of the beast of white supremacy. And going in there, as a volunteer once or twice a week, I admit this freely. This is going to sound a little reductive and it's a little embarrassing, but I think I almost had a little bit of a savior complex. I was bringing in yoga and meditation, and like my yoga mat was like my sword of justice. And I know that's completely reductive, and that's not the case at all. I learned my lesson. But when I started working there full time, I really began to appreciate what it means to live in the gray when you are in a building 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, working with people who are incarcerated, with officers and staff members. I really understood that I needed to walk my walk. And it changed everything because the biggest lesson I found is that you don't have to like people to love them. And my metta practice taught me that. I think I thought it in theory, and I was confronted with it as a volunteer when I was teaching in a jail in Manhattan. It wasn't actually on the island, and there was someone there who was accused of something I think we could all collectively say is pretty terrible. And I felt it in my body when the officer told me why he was there. And I think he partially told me why he was there to pit me against him, because that's what happens, right? Everything is punitive. And then as I was teaching this chaired yoga class with another teacher too, who was fantastic, two men walked up to him and they whispered on either side of his ear. And you could see him, like, all of the color rush out of his face. And his hands started to shake. And I knew he was going to be in trouble once we walked out of that housing area. And he was no longer a person accused of something, but he was somebody who was just afraid, and his humanity showed up in that moment. And it did something to me, because I'd been teaching about metta and loving kindness and saying all this stuff. But in that moment, he was a human. And I said to myself, if I'm going to walk this walk, I need to include my love for everybody, even people I don't like. And being able to put that into action every single day at Rikers as a full-time employee was really profound. And it changed the way that I interacted with people when I wasn't at work.
Mm. Metta is so central to the book. I mean, the question is, why metta? And in the book, you say that when you were reduced to, you say this, and you've said this previously in our conversations, like, you thought it was some BS initially. Other than Rikers, other than that one incident, what shifted or changed for you? Like, why metta to begin with? Why not something else?
I was introduced to loving kindness. I don't want to say by accident, because I say a lot that yoga found me. I didn't find yoga. I was introduced to the practice, but at a time when I really needed it. And I loved asana, and I loved becoming a yoga teacher. But asana was really a way inside my body, and I felt really embodied, and I felt really powerful. And I also got a real rush from asana.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't truly appreciating that by being embodied, it was to help me show up in real life. And I was really just addicted to the dopamine high. So I used to take classes back after back after back. That feeling would go away, and I would take another yoga class. And I ended up injuring my shoulder doing too many, chaturangas. And then I started to sit more, and then realized, oh, this is what it's all about. It's about sitting with myself. And I took a workshop first on metta and loving kindness. And I thought it was BS, because this idea of offering wishes of happiness to people who would cause me harm and who would hurt me seemed really ridiculous. My grandfather was a Black Panther. He was a senior advisor to the Black Panthers, and he was a union organizer, and he was a member of the Communist Party. So the idea of fighting back against something was in my DNA. It's in my schema. So how could love shift that? And it was getting a new relationship with love and understanding that I was unhooking from the energy around either my enemies or around racism or around homophobia. So I was freeing myself when I learned to step into unconditional love. And that's what shifted. Being in an environment like Rikers that's so violent, not just physically, but psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, I needed to be rooted in something deeper than what I was pushing back against.
Wow, that's profound. I still struggle with metta.
Me too.
I mean, it's all a journey. Like, this is a journey. This is a voyage. And when you talk about in the book about the different levels of metta, the one that gets me, it's metta in the enemy, or metta in the difficult person. That is the hardest thing for me. And like you had mentioned about this previous inmate you were working with, and these folks whispering something in his ear, and how your humanity showed up, and how you often say you can love somebody and not like them. It's still hard for me to grasp sometimes. It's like when you're sitting and you're meditating, and then you're going through the rigmarole of, I'm going to say it to myself, I'm going to say it to this person, I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to get to the difficult person. Often it's why I run from metta, because I've been trapped by this pain, this idea of the wrongdoing, and not on the cultivation of the practice of metta. So in the book, you said that cultivating the meta does not let people off the hook or absolve them of the accountability or wrongdoing or whatever they did.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is also profound. And I've actually used that a little bit. It's been successful a little bit, it's a practice. Sometimes it lands. I know what she means fundamentally, right? Right. I know what you mean. Oh, this doesn't let them off the hook. This is, I'm loving this person in this moment because I'm choosing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I don't have to like what they did or who they are really at the end of the day. And then you mentioned forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of forgiveness of the enemy, I'm doing my quotation fingers, or the difficult person, and that we don't even have to like it. Like you get to that point
Mm-hmm.
in meta, and you say this forgiveness part, you don't have to like it.
Mm-hmm.
So my question around that is, when or what are the levels or stages a person's heart or mind goes through when reaching this point in meditation? Like what are the stages? What happens in the body, too?
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. And thank you for setting that up. And I should even back up a little bit. When we talk about metta is the Pali word for loving kindness. And in the Dharma, it's one of the 4 qualities of the heart. And the other 3 qualities are compassion, sympathetic joy, where we're just celebrating for someone else, and then equanimity. And the idea is that if we cultivate these qualities, the Buddha said that we could step into enlightenment, which I liken to freedom. It's a way to be free. And when we practice metta as a quality, it is about truly offering these idea of wishes of happiness, health, and peace and ease for all sentient beings, so including animals and insects and everyone. The way that we practice it as a meditation, we start with ourselves and we offer ourselves phrases. May you be safe. May you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you live with ease. And then we start to expand this. You can think of it as a circle that starts to expand outward. And then we include what's called a loved one or a benefactor, someone we have an easy relationship with, someone we know lights up when they see us and they wish us well. And then we expand the circle even more to include what's called a neutral person. And it's often called a familiar stranger, someone we see but don't know really well. And the way we cultivate that is by saying, just like me, this person is doing the best that they can. And then when we settle into that, we then extend out a little bit wider to a difficult person or the enemy, as it's called, because we've been practicing all of these stages. So by the time that we get to the enemy, we've almost included everybody. Right. Because it's of course we want to wish people well. I do think that most people wake up thinking I'm going to try to do the best that I can today. They may not say that consciously, but even unconsciously. The power in metta isn't about wishing people well. It's noticing what gets in the way, what stops us from wishing people well. And that's where the real juicy work is. Why can't I offer these phrases? Or when I do, you had mentioned, how does it feel in your body? So when I'm talking about the enemy, right, and saying, let me think of somebody who got on my nerves, because we shouldn't be working with the person who's caused us the most harm at first. We start small, right? I talk in the book about, how do we do this? And it's like, that old joke about eating an elephant. You eat an elephant one bite at a time. So you do this a little bit at a time to titrate yourself to this idea of offering loving kindness to a difficult person, and not even necessarily thinking about the difficult person, but how can I separate myself from this energy around this person or the story of what happened? Because we're only hurting ourselves when we hold on to this hate in our heart. I can't remember the teacher. It might have been Pema Chodron, talks about, there's a story in Buddhism about the double arrow. So we get hurt and then we hurt ourselves again by focusing our attention on what hurt us rather than taking care of ourselves. And I think she said something like, and I'm paraphrasing here, you get shot with an arrow in your heart. And instead of pointing your finger at somebody else, shouldn't we turn the attention to ourselves and say, hey, I've got an arrow in my heart. And that is that idea of forgiveness, that we let ourselves off the hook. It's not letting other people off the hook. We can offer forgiveness and hold people accountable. We can offer forgiveness to ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. forgiveness and metta and unconditional love doesn't mean we don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean that we don't say to ourselves, I'm not going to let you hurt me anymore. It's actually an act of love to have a boundary and say, I love you and me so much that I'm putting this boundary up because I don't want you to hurt me, because when you hurt me, you're also hurting yourself. So it's stepping into this idea of interconnectedness and knowing that if one of us is suffering, we're all suffering. So by taking care of ourselves, we're a more powerful person in the world.
Mm. I'm just going to receive that. That's so powerful. I liken that to there's a saying, when you point your finger, you have three pointed back at you, which I have said to some people, and I say it to myself.
No, absolutely. No, it's
checking myself.
It's so important. I talk in the book about things that get in the way, and things that got in the way for me to even loving myself was judgment, shame, and guilt. Those three things were like running stories in my head about why I couldn't love myself. And then by extension, why I couldn't offer unconditional friendliness to other people. So by examining those things and not making them go away, I still get plenty of shame. I still feel, guilt about certain things. But what's changed is my response to it. Right. And mindfulness has done that. Yoga has done that. My spiritual practice has done that. But more than anything, the idea of unconditional love, a sense of ease about myself, leaves space for everything. So I don't feel tight and constricted. I can say like, oh, this is here, but so is love. Love is here too. And let me stay rooted in that. And that's been a North Star for me. And it's absolutely changed my life. I wasn't always kind. And I think it was because I was so guarded. I was afraid of getting hurt, whether it was by society, whether it was by individual people. So I put up this wall so nothing could get in, but my love also couldn't get out. And while stepping into love feels more vulnerable because I am opening myself to get hurt, I know that I'm the safest place that I have, and I'm the safest place that I'm looking for. So when I'm rooted in love for myself, I can show up with that brave act of having an open heart.
Mm. Hmm. I feel like in the book you're like, metta is so powerful. You say it saved your life and in so many ways. I wonder though if there was a different meditation practice that you sought out first, and that maybe was the precursor to practice and your metta unfolding.
Vipassana was definitely first. I started first with mindfulness awareness. I learned how to be present with myself in real time and not trying to fix it or change it or manipulate it or wish life to be different than it was. Right. We cause ourselves suffering. I cause myself suffering. Let me speak from an I place. I cause myself suffering when something showed up that I didn't want, or when there was something that I got that I wanted that I didn't get. Right. That was the biggest thing. So I would try to fix and change what was going on. But with mindfulness, right, just being with what is, I could start to really get to know myself. And that's how I got to be, still. And I don't necessarily say still as a physical state. I mean, still internally, where I could start to really look at the internal landscape of what was happening with me. I could look at the things that I did that I wasn't so proud of. I could look at the things that I was proud of and not try to change anything in my environment. And I think it was from that place, along with therapy. I did therapy for a long time too. And I say that therapy, I think, changed my life because I struggled with mental illness for a while. But metta truly let me enjoy it and let me show up fully and not be afraid to just be myself. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood growing up, and I often felt othered. And I think that was also coupled with, figuring out who my identity was as a woman who was queer in the world, understanding my identity as a woman. And so I was always kind of putting a wall up or feeling on the edges of things because I didn't really feel seen. I felt like I wasn't, Black enough for Black spaces, and I was too Black for other spaces. And when I stepped into appreciating what it meant to love myself unconditionally, I could accept myself and say, oh, this is me. And that's okay. And not everybody's going to like me either. And that's okay. I mean, I say in the book, I don't find myself particularly likable. And that's not like a fish for a compliment. It's just, Sometimes I'm not likable, and that's okay. But I am rooted in kindness because I think there's a difference between being nice and being kind, right? And respectability politics is a really big thing with me. I don't want to feel like I have to show up a certain way. I can show up as myself. You can show up as yourself. And I'm going to respect you because I respect your humanity. And if we can agree on that, we can probably do just about anything.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think in these current tumultuous times that we find ourselves in, you know, I hear a lot of people saying, I'll be kind, but I don't have to be nice, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like we're, you know, I'm going to respect you so long as the respect is returned, and so long as you don't get in my way, and you don't violate my liberatory, you know, freedom, my ability to be. Um, I think meta is a tool that can get us through some of this muck, can get us through some of this stuff. And you know, I'm still working with it.
Oh, listen, I'm still working with it. This is
Yeah.
not this is a practice. I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
But you said something really powerful about kindness and niceness. I think niceness can also be rooted in silence, particularly for those of us who have been nurtured to then saying that silence is golden. And so when we're nice, especially as women, we are often not speaking from, from our throat chakra, and we're silencing ourselves and not saying things that need to be said. But when we're rooted in kindness for ourselves and other people, we use our voice and we show up fully, because that is the way to be in the world, not to silence yourself. Silencing yourself ultimately harms other people because we aren't speaking our truth. And that truth that you speak could actually be benefiting not just you, but someone else and the world. So this idea of being kind and not nice, it doesn't mean I show up somewhere and I'm rude. I mean, that's not kindness either. But showing up who I am and saying things that need to be said, I think is really important. And I think we need to be doing more of that. And even when we're saying things like, I'm going to sit this one out and take care of myself because I think this is your fight and what you should be working on right now. And the way that I'm going to take care of myself is by resting and by nurturing and by holding my community and holding up my community and making sure that they're okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yes to all the things. We both love Stevie Wonder. And I remember when you sent me an advanced copy of the book and I saw that you had written about that, I was so excited because that he's just a genius and a prophet and all of the things. So we're going to talk about Stevie Wonder, and we're going to talk about the album Songs in the Key of Life. Okay, but when you mentioned specifically, okay, Songs in the Key of Life, when you mentioned as what meta is all about, to the people why. Like we can, if you know the song As, you could kind of figure out, like Jana's shaking her head, like, but explain to the folks why and why you put it in the book.
I think, I'm going to actually read a little bit of that if you don't mind, because this is my favorite. This is honestly, I mean, I love all of the book because I wrote it, but what I really love is this part about Stevie Wonder. And I say that my spiritual teachers aren't just in human form, and they aren't just people I've studied with in person. I have learned life lessons from a stroll on a city sidewalk, a paragraph of a book, or a song that moves my soul. If you ask me what metta sounded like, I'll tell you that it's Stevie Wonder. I would have you listen to his song As. It's not the most popular song off the classic double album, Songs in the Key of Life, but it is his most perfect in my estimation. As is what metta or loving kindness is about. From the moment that I hear that first hum of his voice, something magical has conjured. It's the combination of the keyboard and the guitar and his humming. It's as if Stevie is calling me over to sit down because he has something important to say and I want to listen. It's like a grandmother who is watching you do the chores and she is brought back to a moment, a lesson that must be shared. And the chores can wait because this story will make the chores have meaning. And when an elder calls your name because they want to share with you, it's not a choice. When I was growing up, my parents called my name from another room, and the only acceptable response was yes and coming. And at 54, it still is. I sway and hear the opening hum of Stevie's voice as he tells us about Mother Nature and the way that she loves us without any expectations. She loves us because it is the way that she is. It is the way that love is, to simply accept us without having to change or do anything different. And I think that when I listen to Stevie, really any Stevie song, but as in particular, he outlines for us that we are God's children, and all we need to do is to remember that, because when we remember that, we can remember everything. And I loved the song just growing up. But
Mhm.
after I started studying and
Right.
really understood what metta was, I was like, if Stevie hasn't laid this all out for us, if I had just appreciated that then, I might not have even studied metta. But our journeys are what they are. And it's just so powerful. Even his lyrics, he even talks about spiritual bypassing, I think, a little bit when he says, if you think you're born in another time and place, make sure, and he talks about making sure that you remember who you are, um, and that you're not trying to make it something different and you're not trying to skip over it. It is so powerful because he's saying, don't try to make anything different. Don't skip over love. Get in the gritty part of it, because if you don't, you won't be a good ancestor. And that is so important that we remember that we are all, ancestors in training, as Layla Saad teaches us. And so
Mhm.
the way that we live our lives now are the way that people are going to call on us when we're no longer in our bodies. But it starts with learning how to love ourselves, appreciate our place in the world. And I am just so grateful for him, for that whole album, but for As in particular.
Well, dolphins fly, parrots live at sea. I mean, come on.
I
What?
love you more than eight times eight times eight is four. Like, I
Like,
can't love you more than that.
I mean, what? It's just so powerful. And the beautiful way that you wrote the prose and the link to the song. And you could really break down almost any Stevie Wonder song and do that, I think. But as was just it was just laid out there. And
Mhm.
don't you think that when you heard that as a young person, as a child, like your body, like your spirit knew what it was, even if you didn't have a name, like you didn't know why you were, but you knew.
Because it was coming from collective consciousness. And it was like my draw back to collective consciousness. It was my draw back to remembering who I was. And
Mhm.
maybe I didn't even know then who I was, but I knew that it was something. And you feel that. And I feel that with so many songs that, I talk about, it almost feels like time travel. You hear a particular song, and it's not just nostalgia, but it is actually feeling yourself back in that place where you heard the song for the first time. And it's not memory, it is something tangible that you are connecting to, that's something even larger than you, larger than me. And it's about back to this idea of who we all are. And Stevie does that like no other person with so many of his songs. There's this universality about so much of his music and about his lyrics that I find so powerful and transformative. um, and it's just so special. I talk about too, my maternal grandmother wasn't somebody who I was particularly close to, and I didn't know that As was actually also her favorite song. And so at her funeral they played it, and I was just lit up. And that's like another way, right? It's another way that you realize how you can still connect and love, because even though she's not in her body anymore, I was like, oh, we have that. We have that. And maybe I wish that I knew it while she was in her body, but we have it now. So it's something that I can hold on to now.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, one of the many, many juicy tidbits from the book. It's just so lovely, so beautiful. Um, you also write that the four divine abodes
Mhm.
are a part of your practice, like a part of your toolkit that you use for your practice, your contemplative work. Can you explain how, as a queer Black woman, they've helped you navigate Rikers and the world
Mhm.
in general?
Yeah. So the four divine abodes, the four Brahma Viharas, we call them in the Dharma, or the four qualities of the heart that I mentioned earlier. It's loving kindness, and loving kindness is the antidote to hate and to fear. And I really like to lean into the fear part, because When people are afraid, they tend to hate. We tend to hate what we're afraid of. And so I found myself really feeling comforted in that idea. When confronted with hate, I could lean into this idea of understanding that maybe someone's just simply afraid. And because they're afraid, they don't know how to act. So it brings that humanity to them. And the second quality is compassion, which is the antidote to suffering. And so may all people be free from suffering, and understanding that I could feel suffering, my own suffering that I've caused too. I'm not just talking about the suffering, that we sort of feel because of, causes and conditions of life, but the suffering that I caused myself. And so that's been really powerful for me. And then we have sympathetic joy, or mudita, which I absolutely love too. It's this idea of being happy for someone for happiness's sake. And I think of, and this is going to sound like a silly example, but I use it all the time anyway. When somebody gets that golden ticket on American Idol, the way I cheer and cry for them because I am so excited, like that is the way that I feel mudita in my soul. When somebody is celebrating and you are simply celebrating with them. And it's the antidote to envy and jealousy. It's not about you. It is you celebrating for celebration's sake. And you just feel that for them. And then when you embody all of these things, the last abode, this divine house that we want to inhabit, is equanimity. And when you have loving kindness, and I love that the Buddha laid out like loving kindness, compassion, and then mudita, sympathetic joy, as these qualities to embody. And then you get to the last one, and it's a state that we can inhabit. We can be balanced, right? And equanimity is the antidote to prejudice. So when we do all of these things, we can show up in the world feeling full and feeling whole, and not trying to fix or change things to our preferences, but saying, this is the way that it is. And it doesn't mean that I won't do something about it, because contemplative practice shouldn't just be about navel gazing. It should lead us to act. We should be sitting and doing these practices, and they should lead us to some action, to do something. So all of those things have helped me. They've helped me unpack, I think, my own internalized homophobia, my own internalized racism that I grew up with. I didn't just sort of fight back against all of these things. I had to decolonize these things that were inside my body, messaging that I heard about myself, about what it means to be Black, or about what it means to be queer. So these practices helped me say, like, no, the world may be interested in annihilating me and my community, but I don't have to hold on to that. I can show up as myself. And in fact, showing up as myself is a form of resistance. Showing up in my full joy is a form of resistance. And it's really powerful. Like Alice Walker said, hard times require furious dancing. And I think the four Brahma Viharas are the way that I get to sort of dance through life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So is Nixon 5 mudita?
Nixon 5 is mudita. The way I cheer and the way that you see other people celebrating has been, it has been what, instead of doom scrolling on my phone, it has been a way to celebrate and to see the city coming together. It has just been an absolute joy. Like, go Knicks. I think people who don't even like the Knicks are even just loving the fact that there's celebration, seeing people cheer, and seeing how everybody is just excited. And I think this is the first time in a while that we've all been able to rally around something and say, you know what? It's not going to get us down because the Knicks won. And if the Knicks won for the first time in 53 years, it's all going to be okay.
Right. Right. It's been a beautiful display of this love, this mudita. And it's just seeing people in the streets and, somebody said, go Knicks.
Go Knicks.
I'm not even a fan. I'm like, go Knicks.
Go
I'm like,
Knicks. Knicks in 5.
Knicks in 5. I was saying Knicks in 4, but we did what we did, right? And notice how I put myself in it.
We all did it, and we all collectively rallied. This was all of us. We all brought this in.
Yes, yeah, I do think that. I think collective healing, sometimes it's energetic, and you don't even know how it's going to show up, right? And it shows up like Knicks in 5. It shows up like other things, like dismantling of things.
Yeah.
Sit back and witness our ancestors at work through us,
Mm-hmm.
these things are occurring, right? So
Yep.
I just love that. You discuss in the book your preference for the word liberation as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to enlightenment. So in the yoga spaces, we're always talking about enlightenment and, samadhi and all of this. You say that enlightenment feels like a solidarity activity, and that when the word liberation is uttered, it conjured elements of community and even revolution.
Mm-hmm.
But here's my question. It's kind of a devil's advocate question. Doesn't the path to samadhi start with the self in solitude?
Yes. And when I was talking about enlightenment, I'm talking about the wellness industrial complex, because we all know there's a wellness industrial complex. And that when people were using love and light as a way to spiritually bypass or over difficult things, or when I was in white yoga spaces, and I was told that me talking about my own experiences was me actually separating from oneness and not appreciating oneness. But it is important for us to acknowledge the suffering of ourselves and other people, because we have to work through that to get to this idea of enlightenment. So that was a pushback against this very individualized feeling that happens in the wellness industrial complex and in a lot of spaces that really talk about this idea of getting well as saying that there's something wrong with you, so you need to get well, so you need to buy this package, or you need to go to this place, or you need to take this particular retreat, or drink this green juice to make you feel okay. So that's what I was pushing back against, this idea that that whole love and light language that's kind of everywhere. So when
Right.
I say liberation, the word liberation, we know it triggers people, because you talk about liberation and people get tight. Some people get tight, because some people are like, well,
Certain
wait,
people.
what are you talking about? And what I'm talking about is all of us,
Mhm.
right? If I am free and if you're not free, then I'm not free. And that is not talked about enough in the wellness industrial complex. We talk about a lot about our own individualized freedom, our own individualized enlightenment. But if somebody over there is suffering, I am suffering if we are all one. And I want that conversation to be a lot more, I want it articulated more. And I want us to expressly talk about that, because
Mhm.
there's such a way we jump over that. And I find it infuriating, because it leaves out so many people who need access to wellness, or who think that these practices aren't for them because they have been seen as so exclusionary, as so expensive, as so exclusive. And so my way of saving liberation is a direct pushback. It was like when I was working at Rikers and I would say, I love you to people. The officers would get so tight, because why am I, this civilian who's working inside, talking to people who are incarcerated, and they say, I love me, and I say it back? I'm not supposed to do that. And I wasn't supposed to do that. But if somebody offers me love, I'm going to offer it back, because my freedom is their freedom and their freedom is my freedom. And if somebody feels free and grateful because of a practice that we just did, it is my responsibility to
Mhm.
receive that, and to receive it with my entire heart. So I'm not going to say, oh, I can't say I love you back, because, it's not allowed. That's not, that's not me being enlightened, because that's not me being free.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you for explaining that. I kind of knew, but I wanted to expound on that a
I,
little
I,
bit.
I knew you knew. I appreciate you setting me up with that layup.
Just set up the layup.
Yeah.
Um, I have one more question, and then maybe we have a couple minutes for anyone that's listening, if they want to put in the chat or ask questions. Yes, Galanda, I had this girl. I can't play basketball, but I can.
Neither
Um,
can I. I'm a tennis girl.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about rest. So let's kind of take all of what we've discussed and wrap it into to my final inquiry here and talk about rest. Rest is one of the myriad threads throughout your book. You talk specifically about how the inmates at Rikers struggle to get good sleep and rest, and why, and the conditions and that kind of things. I loved when you put in the book, one of the inmates said, "Put me in the earth, Miss O." Like, I was like, oh my God. When you did the, because it was a request for the yoga nidra, put
Yes.
in the earth, Miss O. And you spoke about comfort, like you speak to yours during the time there. but also the discomfort of staff, corrections officers, you spoke to that a little bit, and inmates. Was there a revelatory moment when you thought about how everybody in every body was uncomfortable at Rikers? And if so, what was it?
This might have even started when I was a volunteer,
Hmm.
when I would go teach classes in housing areas. When I worked full time, I worked with people one on one. So I had my own office. I helped to launch a wellness program in the women's jail. So people would come see me and I would sit with them one on one. And when I was teaching group classes, when I was a volunteer, people would get on the yoga mats because we had yoga mats, we had bolsters, and even eye pillows for classes that a generous benefactor gave us. And people would say these yoga mats are more comfortable than our mattresses. And
Hmm.
what I discovered was is that the mattresses were actually not even sleeping mattresses. They were gym mats that even specifically said that these are not to be used for sleep, and they were everywhere in the jail. And I think there was a lawsuit that changed that, so the mattresses changed and they got actual sleeping mattresses. So that was my first inkling to discomfort, and I realized that it's not about what people did and why they're there, but people can't heal and get well if they aren't comfortable. And one of the things that I noticed was that everybody was uncomfortable at Rikers. I don't just mean folks who are incarcerated, but I mean staff, I mean officers, because the system is working as it's designed. Everybody says, like, oh, the system's broken. It's not broken. It's working really well and it's chugging along, doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is to punish, annihilate, and over police Black and Brown communities. The disproportionate rate that we are, you know, incarcerated, I won't go down that line and start to talk about that. But what I will talk about, because of that system and the way that it's set up, there's so much pain. There's pain in the way that officers are trained to talk about people being bad and good, and that discomfort lives in your body. The longer that you're there and the more that you take all of that in, you don't know how to turn off because you start living in your sympathetic nervous system. So you don't even know how to get to rest and digest anymore. So one of the things I could do for folks who came to see me was to offer this idea of how do you tap into your parasympathetic nervous system and talking about the science about it. There's this idea that people who are incarcerated aren't smart or don't have brains, but I would talk about the science on purpose because this wasn't about, I want you to come to me so I can teach you these things. This is about, let's talk about these practices so you can take this with you. When I would ask people who would come to see me for the first time, we would do this assessment. We launched this program to address anxiety, insomnia, and general somatic issues. So I would ask people about how they were sleeping there, but my bigger question was, how are you sleeping before you got here? Because that would give me a real clue as to what their life was like. So we could talk about sleep in general and how important rest is. And if people knew how to let their bodies rest, they would come back and tell me, I fell asleep. I used a sanitary napkin as a sleeping mask so I could get better sleep at night. Because in the dorms, the lights would never go off completely. So people are sleeping with the lights on, and we know how terrible that is to the nervous system. And I think there's a statistic that talks about after 3 days of being incarcerated, your circadian rhythm is messed up. Like it's completely jacked up after 3 days. And I knew people who had been at Rikers for 4 years, for 5 years. So this idea of sleep was so critical. And folks would say, like, I got to sleep this way. And I would get that information and then I'd be able to share it with other people because I didn't have the experience of being incarcerated. So when you're sharing things with folks, they look at you with a side eye, like, what do you know about it? Because you don't even, you don't even sleep here. So by being able to collectively pool our wisdom, right? Like, I think that's really important. And that idea of getting wisdom from other folks who didn't feel empowered, I think is also giving folks, letting folks step into their own agency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, some of those tips and tidbits we can take. We're not at Rikers, but we can use in our own lives. Like how is our rest being diminished currently with all that's what's going on, and what type of sleep are we getting? Based on where our nervous systems are, and balancing of that. So this has been a lovely, amazing, too short conversation that I want to wrap up with a nice bow. And I would love if anyone have any questions to put in the chat, or we have Oneika for a couple more minutes before we wrap up. Yes, Hannah. Hannah says Rikers has taken the lives of so many.
Oh, too many, too many. And I didn't talk about this, but I left because of the suffering, the vicarious trauma, and then the toll that it took even working there. I don't know how people stay there for 20, 30 years, because by the end of 4.5 years, I was completely debilitated emotionally, spiritually, even doubling and tripling down on some of my practices, even going back to therapy, even having people like you to be able to process with. It wasn't enough, because we are not meant to be in environments like that. People are not meant to be caged like that, and people aren't meant to work in those environments to have people be in that kind of suffering and to bear witness to it.
Mm-hmm. Charlene says, same with elders in hospital and nursing homes. Cannot rest due to constant assistance. That is not helpful. And we're seeing it. It's in our institutions, and I don't. It's like it's designed that way, and it's also awful and it's detrimental. We know the older we get, the more sleep and rest we need. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Some studies are now saying 10 hours. Who's
Mm-hmm.
getting 10 hours of sleep? Like, I want to know who it is, other than a teenager. I want to know who's getting 10 hours. Anyway, but it's really, it's really embedded in this kind of colonialist mindset that that's what's happening. So, um, oh, Charlene said, send a copy of your book to Mayor Mamdani.
Maybe I will. I have a couple of ins to the mayor's office. Maybe I will. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Mm,
I was just interviewed in a local Manhattan paper where the journalist asked me. So Mondani says that he's going to be the one to close Rikers. How hopeful? How do you feel about that? And I said that I'm hopeful. I mean, a lot of people have said it, and I guess we'll see if it happens.
mm,
But I'm hopeful. I am hopeful with what I've seen so far.
mm.
He has been really incredible. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I'll be there with popcorn when it burns down, watching it.
Are you going to be, or you're not going to be sitting on top of the building with tea?
I'll be sitting on top of the building with the other 92%,
Yeah,
eating my popcorn, watching, absolutely, with some
yeah,
tea.
yeah, yeah. That's rough. I mean, we both, we have, obviously we're both yoga teachers, but we both worked in jails. I have not. I worked in the Prince George's County Detention Center here in Maryland. It wasn't like Rikers. Like the stories that we have swapped and shared, it wasn't the same. But you do leave different. You do. I left after about 4 years too. I mean, I don't. I was like, I don't know. Like you could feel your soul leaving. Like it was just something. um it was the smell, it was the texture, it was all of that, and you end up losing yourself in as much trying to help. I ran a substance abuse program there, and you're trying to help, but it's so difficult, and at some point you got to save yourself, right?
You do, because, and that's important. And Metta taught me that allowing myself to keep sinking was actually not doing anybody any good, because I matter as much as everybody else. And so many of us, especially those of us who do service work or who do direct service work, we start to think that we don't matter because the system relies on our passion. It relies on the fact that we want to show up, to allow ourselves to be worn down to a nub. I'm not saying that the program shouldn't exist. And the person who is the mindfulness coach now at Rikers is an unbelievable person. Her name is Bree Scullark, and she's been doing this work. And what we need to recognize that we don't need to do this alone. In other, like, many hands make for light work. So we don't completely, take ourselves under with that. I think I had vicarious PTSD for the first 2 years
Mm,
after I left, like flinching at certain noises and not even realizing it. My partner had to point out to me, like, hey, you're safe.
mm, mm. Yeah. Hannah said Rikers is hell.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was doing an interview where the Ethan Nichtern said that he called Rikers a hell realm, that we talk about in Buddhism, and it's definitely a hell realm for sure.
Mhm. Do we have time for Hannah's question? You can, if you
And
take. Yes, take yourself off of mute.
I just was going to say, I had a nephew who grew up in foster care in New York City, and he got incarcerated because he got into a gang and he got stopped for selling drugs. Bright, bright young man, mathematical genius. He left Rikers with PTSD and I'm sure a slew of other types of mental health issues. He didn't go there with that.
Right.
He came out with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like you couldn't reach him
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. And he was young. He was like between, I think, the ages of 17 and 18. So it's sad to see so many young people who grow up in care, foster care, homelessness. They think that the path of crime is the solution because they don't have a lot of people in their life that care about them. Even if those people are, maybe let's say I live in Atlanta, he lives in New York, he doesn't want to leave New York. Right? So the system is the go-to, but just so many people need tools. And I actually had a conversation this week at Covenant House about if we're giving young people career tools, we also have to give them mental health and self-regulating tools. And they're getting ready to start. Last year, I did a yoga program at Covenant House, Georgia. But this year, they're going to expand it, hopefully, if they can hire someone in the behavioral health category to extend a yoga program. So just sharing that your message is well received, especially coming from Rikers.
Thank you
So much.
Thank you, Hannah, and really sending love and care as well to all of those who are impacted because it's tough,
Mm-hmm.
and all our responsibility.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you all. This has been amazing, amazing conversations, and the chat has been lit. I am sorry I didn't get to all the chat, but I was trying my best to read and also talk to my friend Oneika, who has her amazing book. If you don't have it, Luden said she's going to listen to it. She does this Oneika talking, but it's this is an amazing book. It's really it gives you perspective on meta and just our practices. As we are yoga teachers and mindfulness instructors as well. So thank you all so much. I appreciate you, Oneika. I appreciate BYTA, Galinda, Lorenzo, Jana, Miss Jana, our elder. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so grateful. Thank you, Baida. Thank you, everyone. It's really been a blessing. Ashe, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jana. Do you want to have a last word before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to say I put it in the chat. This was like a continuing education workshop. Thank you, Oneika. We appreciate that. So much food for thought and so much for us to take in as yoga teachers, wellness practitioners, however you want to label yourself. There's so much work out here for us to do, especially in our community. And one of the things you said, there is a wellness industrial complex, but that complex doesn't necessarily serve us. And thankfully, this is why BITA came together because we recognize that we needed the people who are closest to us, who are us, to help resolve some of the issues and we can straighten this out. We have the tools and more of us are getting certifications, taking yoga classes. So it's just exciting. And there's a lot of so much good work to do. Good work. So I'm just speechless. I appreciate you so much. I ordered the book. It hasn't come yet, but I
Thank
can't,
you. Thank you
yeah,
for the
but
support.
I can't wait to read it. And thank you, Pamela, for such a beautiful facilitation of Books and Brunch with Vida. We're going to put this up we'll get the video up on the YouTube channel and we'll share it out on social media because it's so valuable. So my heart is full. Thank you.
Thank
One
you.
last word to anyone. If you check the comments, there are links to both Pamela and Oneika's resources, as well as the conference for the Black Yoga Teacher Alliance
Oh
10th anniversary.
yeah. Oh
So please
yeah.
check the comments for those, and we thank you very much for your participation today.
Thank
Thank
you. All
Have a good
right.
one.
you. Be well.
Take care, everybody, and thanks for showing up.